Hi there, and welcome to Comic Book ER, aka Comic Book Emergency Room Show. This is a show I've created where I take characters from comic books and try to fix their wrongfully adapted live action portrayal costumes to make them not only more comic accurate, but in universe reasonable for the film. There will be different types of episodes as the show continues, but today is a normal episode. Any characters shown or portrayed here are not creations of mine. I do not own any of these characters or films, and all pictures or characters seen in the show are owned by their respective companies. Today's victim is Sidewinder, aka Seth Volker from Marvel Comics. This is the rundown of today's episode and how it will work. The first two episodes will be learning about this character, checking on his current movie status, and then his comic book status, learning about him just enough why he looks the way he does in both portrayals. And then step 3 and 4 will be explaining how to correctly adapt a character on screen, no matter how dull or silly, into live action so it makes sense for the character and the audience. I guarantee you it is possible, and I've yet to meet a character that can't adapt into live action. So buckle up. And then finally, in the last step, we will be taking all that information we've gathered and making a brand new costume that the character should have had in the movie. Some may say a character's costume is too silly, or too boring, or too stupid to be on screen. No matter, we will find the middle ground together and make a costume that is appealing to everyone involved, all while respecting the character. Let's go. So this character's name is Sidewinder, aka Seth Volker, and it doesn't exactly explain why he gives himself that code name, and he's portrayed by actor Giancarlo Esposito. I probably botched that up, but I apologize about that. But his portrayal of this character is, he's a good actor, but in this it says that he's a tactical, like, assassin that becomes the leader of an organization called Serpent, and he apparently in this, the only information that we get is that he is the one that found Samuel Stearns in the wreckage of the Incredible Hulk movie, and he's the one that basically, like, that's his connection to the character, the leader, who he gets hired by later on to do some jobs framing the president later on. But it seems he's like a tactical character, and he doesn't have like much of a costume. He just kind of wears like tactical gear, which in the real world situation, like if this wasn't a comic book film, it would make sense for him to wear that. And it doesn't really match. He just becomes the leader of Serpent, which there's different reasons in the comics, and he just takes on the name Sidewinder, and he's learns many languages, so he knows a lot of languages, and he's an expert in combat. He's a knife mastery, which is weird. Expert marksman, tactical. He's just like basically Deathstroke. I'm just saying he like has a lot of abilities fighting. It doesn't say that he has any powers. It doesn't say anything other than that backstory that we have. He's the leader of Serpent, and then he fights Captain America in the movie, and he just wears like a vest with a bunch of knives on it, and then later on he wears this jacket that has like orange on it. But moving on. So in the comics, his origin is that he was a professor that after he lost his job or whatever as a professor, he was hired by Roxxon Company, which is a secretive organization, and they mostly create villains and stuff. And they gave him a cloak that allows him to teleport and cross long distances, and then that eventually gave him the nickname Sidewinder, which is what he's called in the comics. And because of this, he's part of the Serpent Squad, which is the first group, and then he creates the Serpent Society, which is the group that is mostly known in the comics, and they have characters like Anaconda, Death Adder, Black Mamba, Viper, Diamondback, Cobra, basically any fucking snake character that you can think of, they have it. And it says he goes under a fucking procedure, and so I assume that's what gives him he has like the reptilian skin, allows him to fight characters like Captain America and such. His first comic book portrayal was in Marvel 2-in-1 number 64 in March of 1980. And as you can see, his suit reflects the 1980s as being bright colors and kind of with the tights and the cape, the long cape, which is a part of his character description. And the real reason that he's in charge, I see here, that is because every time he gets a person to join his servant society, because of his cape, he tells them that they will never be imprisoned, and he will teleport and find them and bring them back, so they can keep doing what they need to do. And then it also says that he has a chip in his brain that allows him to get precision and pinpoint accuracy in teleporting. And in the comics, it says the suit offers him protection against firearms and features a rebreather unit, allowing him to breathe underwater. And it can also project energy, and I guess there are side effects, which is that crown on his head. So just from that, it doesn't exactly tell me why he has reptilian skin, but it did say that the suit gives him side effects. So I'm assuming, I'm not too familiar with him, that the suit giving him the crown thing on his head also gave him the side effect of his reptilian body. So when it comes to both his portrayals, in the comics, it seems that we have a more 1980s look, and in the movie we have more of a tactical look. And so now we have to find the medium between both tactical and 1980s kind of style. So normally I wouldn't start with the drawing already being made, but I usually talk about it. But I made this kind of while I was at work, which inspired me to make the show. But my idea was that, so the way you adapt a character into live action is that, for one, you have to make it present day accurate, right? So 1980s, that was based on 1980s, 1950s, 40s, any point past present day, like the 2000s basically. Characters should not wear the fucking tidy whities. I'm very anti tidy whities because that was based off of the luchadors and wrestlers and bodybuilders back in the day, and like strong men, all kinds of that stuff. They always wore the little shorts, and then in wrestling they wore they had these glorious costumes, which look cool. But if you're trying to adapt it into a live action, the tidy whities is a no go. And so basically take like a suit that is a combination of tactical and comic book. So kind of just like all the other Marvel, like characters like Doctor Strange. If he can walk around, if this character lives in a universe where a guy literally was walking around with a cloak makes sense in this world, right? So if this was just a movie where it was just Captain America and he had no other characters, right? No Doctor Strange, no characters like Spider-Man or Iron Man, they didn't exist. A cape would be kind of a little weird to pop in, with, but it's not something that Sam has never seen before in the movie. So the cape would just be like, what I would assume is my adapted story would be this, would be that his cape could have been created by someone trying to attempt to make Doctor Strange's cloak, right? And so maybe they changed it. Maybe instead of it just being able to fly, it has the ability to teleport, which explains why he just disappears and gets away really fast. But so if you're trying to make a character live action and you want to have bright colors, you can do bright colors. It is possible. If Spider-Man can walk around in red fucking pajamas, and then you got characters like Captain Marvel, which her suit perfectly portrayed, and then Iron Man, if you have characters that wear bright colors, then in his universe it makes sense. So, but I wouldn't go full reptilian skin because that seems a little too far. I mean, you can eventually down the road, but at this point, I would say that you could like maybe when they found Stearns, right? This is like my version that I would do, is that maybe he did experiments trying to improve himself. Kind of how, like, that's kind of what happened in the Hulk movie. Like, Abomination wanted to be improved, and so he had Samuel Stearns give him whatever. So Samuel Stearns has that ability. And then you could say that Roxxon is like a through company that the leader probably created, that somebody else got a hold of. Basically, he's like not he like he created it, but because he's imprisoned, he's not allowed to be in charge of it. And so Sidewinder ends up working through the leader through that, which that's not what happens in the thing. This is how it would make sense for the costume to make sense in the world. And because all the other characters, like, the red and the blue, it's just like based off of the Avengers characters that live in his world. it would make sense that he would want to wear something to rival them, uh, and something that would probably give him a boost. You know, which as you can see, I've given him like instead of him like the suit, and I'm pretty sure the mask that he like the suit that he's wearing is like up to his neck. Like the thing is his face. I think that's actually his face because the suit changed his face to look like that. But you don't want to do that in the movies because you people in movies want to have the actor portrayed correctly, right? They want their face to be shown, which is a huge thing. So you have to have it able to have a mask be taken off or on, somehow have their face revealed. It doesn't always have to be the way, but for this character, that's what we're gonna go with. And he's gonna have a helmet instead of it being his mask, instead of it being his face. And just because it's Marvel, I thought it would be an interesting feature for the glasses to be kind of like a nanotech because they've done nanotech in every fucking. I know everybody gets sick of nanotech, but it is the most efficient way to put a mask on and off. I myself would prefer like a helmet, and since this is his first time, I would say that he should have a helmet. But you can go nanotech if he has a cloak that gives him teleportation powers. Then you can give him fucking nanotech. It's no big deal. Um, but that's important for the movie so they can see the actor's face, which is very important for people who make movies. They want the actor to be able to see in their movie and be like, oh, they did a good job, and they're hired for other projects. But at the same time, he's got, as you can see, he has like pouches on his belt. He's got a lot of tactical stuff going on. Instead of the boots being just like like stockings, like sleeves that go up to his legs, he has very large tactical boots which could have a knife pockets in them, because he seemed to, I think in the movie, had a lot of knives going on. But I think that was them trying to be like, oh, we've basically taken away all of his abilities, and we have given him knives, which is great. He actually did really, I enjoyed his performance, but Sidewinder would not be doing that, and it's fine if you don't want to be like, you can have in the fight, like you can have it so he does the teleportating, all around, but because Sam doesn't have any powers, you're like, oh, we're afraid to do that. You don't have to be afraid to do it because he's already fought characters way more powerful than that. I mean, literally, if you remember, Sam Wilson in the movies fought little Ultron, right? Ultron drones. He helped fight them, and then he helped fight aliens. If he can fight robots and aliens, then a guy teleporting is no BFD. No fucking big deal. And so, but I with the reptilian things, I just put a little like sprinkle of reptilian on him. Which I think when you're trying to make a character, say that you're trying to make him accurate, half and half is perfect. You don't want to go full comic book, full movie, because you go full movie, you're gonna have a guy walking around in a t-shirt, and they're gonna be like, oh, see, he has that symbol from the comics, but it's just like anyone can do that. To make sure that this character is this character and no one else can perform it, you have to be like, you have to take 50% of the comic book and 50% of what you think he should wear in the real world, because you're going to create something that is completely different, kind of like how Marvel does a lot. And we're going to go through all these characters, but right now we're just doing Sidewinder. And yeah, you could have moments where he takes the mask off, and you can have the cloak be defeated. Like in the very end, maybe Sam gets the cape from him, right? And then he takes his mask off, and then you can see him defeated, which would be a great Marvel moment. It would be a great comic book moment, honestly, for when you have a character that's like defeated, and you get to unmask them, as opposed to like just pushing them over, and then they're defeated immediately. You know what I mean? That kind of takes away the thought that he's a supervillain, and there's no reason to name him Sidewinder if you could defeat him like any other thug. It's fine if he's defeated immediately, it can be. It happens in comic books, but then it inspires the character to become more than what he is. He's not just Seth, right? He's Sidewinder, and it's supposed to get across that, if you have a character like a comic book, like a film, it's best to have the characters in a 50-50 costume. That makes sense, because if you don't, it kind of takes away the character's identity. See, in these stories, these characters become these characters because it's their identity. This is who he truly is. He is the Sidewinder, right? Because he can, his ability to get away, like Houdini almost. He's a legendary character. They're all supposed to be their legendary forms, so they're not just Seth walking around. It's not Mr. Volker, right? It's Sidewinder. Sidewinder is supposed to be like, he's like the leader of like a terrorist organization that often steals stuff. They commit assassination attempts. They even had a group called the Serpent Citadel. So they change often, and I think maybe you could have it so at first he's in tactical form, right? And you can maybe movies do this a lot where they have him at the very end of the film, like through the whole film he's called Seth, and he's just wearing tactical gear. And the very end, all of a sudden he's Sidewinder. I'm glad that at least he was called Sidewinder, but again, he should be wearing a costume, because having Captain America come in a bright red and white blue costume and then having him fight random thugs, and you're like, wait a minute, these aren't random thugs, these are supervillains. No, they're not. They're not supervillains. They're just people wearing black. So in order to get across, and I think movies have a hard time with that, you need to have the villains wear their costume, and it's a big terrifying. Like, they're absolutely terrified to give certain characters their costumes. I believe this, the way that I have made it here, where you take half of tactical, which it was in the live action idea, that you want him to be more grounded, and then 50% of it being comic accurate. In lore sense, this is what he should have looked like in that world. This is what he would have created. This is the costume I think would make the most sense, because you have to make so it makes sense for his character, not just for your movie. It has to make sense for his character, what his character wants to be, his true form, and you have to find a medium between that. Maybe at first you don't have to have the full costume. Maybe at first he wears tactical, but he wears a lot of red, right? And then he starts putting on gloves later on in the film, and then he realizes he needs to do better, so he starts adding more tactical gear, like pouches and guns and stuff, like you had him in the movie. But then at some point he realizes it's not enough to defeat Captain America. I need something more, right? And so you kind of have this like evolution of him turning into Sidewinder. You could do that also. That's another option. But again, you can have him just be in the costume right away. But if you're terrified and you think that nobody is going to appeal to it, I guarantee you, if you made action figures of this, right, and then you made him look like this in the film, it would be much more exciting than him just like beating up a random guy that you're just like, oh wait, who was that? Seth? Oh, I didn't recognize him because he was wearing a fucking jacket instead of his costume, right? I'm not trying to, I'm not trying to trail off, but and then I feel like the look with him when he had his mask off with the glasses was pretty iconic looking, and I've never actually seen like. I just took the information I found, so I've never seen him fire the gun in the pictures I found. So I just assumed, I took a wild shot in the dark, and I made this little other drawing just to show you, what could happen. Like maybe later on at the very end he gets a gun, right, and then they take him away. And then when you take him away, you can take his mask off, right, and it's just having him eventually wear his comic accurate costume, which it doesn't have to 100% be comic accurate. Like, he doesn't need to walk around wearing a fucking gymnast uniform like, I'm the Sidewinder, right? It doesn't have to be like that. It has to be like, it can make sense for the world, right? It doesn't have to be like him in tidy whities. Like, you can adapt it so he's just wearing like tactical, what he would consider to be tactical gear, like kind of like in real life where soldiers, they have different colors, right? So it's not unlikely that people would wear different colored tactical gear, right? But this is a comic book world, so that's another thing. That's the comic book world. In the comic book world, people dress like that. He lives in a world where fucking a purple guy popped out of nowhere with shining armor, like Thanos, character like that. Like, you can't make incorrectly. Like, they get away with characters like this because he's not like a character that people know, you know, and I feel like it takes away from their actual creation. Like people work so hard on these characters and these origins, and then they put him in the movie, and he's just like a guy in a fucking jacket. And being a writer myself, it's cool to see a character on screen, but it's a fucking tragedy that he doesn't look like how you worked so hard to make him look so cool. And I put the effect on his cape. Like, you don't have to have it so everything on him is 100% pristine. You can add damage repair, right? Like, you could have it so his cape on the very bottom, like I did with black, kind of being like it drags on the ground and it collects like dust. And then you could do that with his boots as well. Honestly, you could kind of darken it a bit. Like, you don't have to have it bright colors, but just to show you, hopefully I've made a version that's appealing to everyone. And the whole thing with the no tidy whities too is that you don't have to completely go away from it, but I strongly think that it shouldn't be in modern day live action things. But if you're going to have tidy whities be in the character's live action form, it should be it should purposely be goofy because it's already a goofy design. Like, nobody's gonna walk around like that. Nobody's gonna walk around like, unless you are constantly reminding people that you're supposed to be dressed like a wrestler, which, if people have nothing to do with wrestling, they have no idea why you're wearing it, you know. So it kind of has to make sense for not only the character, but for everyone in that world to be like, why are you wearing that thing? And you can be like, oh, it's my uniform. But characters that wear the underwear over their tights, it's like, it's kind of like a callback that nobody knows about anymore. Like, nobody knows that's why they made costumes like that, and we kind of need to move forward past the point of that evolution of costume. And so you kind of have to evolve it so it's like, it's almost like a super suit, right? It's almost like a uniform. Um, so have it to be not too silly and not too dull. The colors help. I think the colors do help, but you don't always have to go bright colors. I just go with exactly that's the color that he wore in the comics. And you don't have to be afraid of bright colors. You can wear the bright colors and have it look good. Uh, it's sometimes, you know, they're like smaller organizations that make films, and I've even seen fan films that, I mean, they not afraid to show color. But it's just the way that you process it, I think, is what matters. Like, if you're making the bright colors be all over the fucking place. Like, if I colored yellow on every section of his body, you know, that would be ridiculous because he doesn't have that. And even in the comics, it was like yellow was on his cape, and maybe I colored in a buckle or two, you know. And then in the comics, he had a lot of blue, but then he had a lot of like a light blue, kind of like an indigo color, I guess, like a purple, light purplish. But it's so fucking light that you can't even tell. Um, so I kind of added in a lot of the blue because it just, you know, and I strongly think that certain, like, if you're having a character with colors that don't match the rest of the uniform, like if I had just colored in purple shoes, green tactical belts, you know, orange, just all fucking different colors. So every character should have like a pattern of colors, a certain pattern. It's like Sidewinder would never wear green, you know, and that's important. Every character's color pattern is important to who they are, right? And I'm not the best drawer, but I hope that I've gotten that point across that the like the medium of colors is important. The medium of adding and making sure you remember that he's in a real world situation, but he's not. He's like in a comic book real world, you know. So people wear similar versions to the comic accurate, but anyways. And this is my end result.